Okay, so good morning. We started a new book today. The name of the book is Jesus in the Home. I think the title tells everything what this book's all about. It's a book, the author is Neio Lucio, a spiritual writer who wrote via the psychography of Francisco Xavier. Most of his books, and quite a few. I was actually impressed when I look at it. He wrote quite a few books, not only three or four as I thought he would. I'm not going to give all their names over here. Anyone can check his bibliography online. But a great number of his books was dedicated at education of children and adolescents. But of course, as I always say, any and all book of value, someone will read and will abstract from it, we gather from it as much as one is able to. So this book, quite simple reading, um, offers tremendous facility for young children to learn from it. But for us adults, it has also depth that it can go in much greater depth that perhaps a child would not be able to reach. It's a book that is important in the spiritist the development of Spiritism in Brazil because it set pretty much the idea of the Jesus in the home. It was there before, but it is a book that is very often used to demonstrate how important or significant it is to welcome Jesus in the home and to have at least one dedicated day as we know is pretty much conventional, and I hope it's not just a convention for most people. I hope it's not. And do the Jesus in the home when you read the gospel or a book of messages, anything related with the teachings of Jesus at least once a week with the whole family together. It's highly recommended in the Spiritist doctrine. To say a little bit about the author, Neio Lucio is the reincarnation of Cneio Lucius that we met in the book 50 years later. On the historical psychographies of Emmanuel via Francisco Xavier. He started the first book was 2,000 years ago, right? In which he was Publius Lentulus, the Roman senator, who was very proud, who met Jesus, who asked Jesus to help his daughter, and Jesus really did help his daughter, but was too proud to allow himself to convert to the ideas of Jesus. He was actually in the, he was present when Jesus was crucified. His wife later converted to or even before the death of Jesus, converted to Christianity. And then his second reincarnation, following reincarnation, is the book 50 years later. And in that book, we meet Cinerio Lucius. Cinerio Lucius was the grandfather of Celia, and Celia had converted to Christianism. And Cinerio Lucius was the only one who truly understands Celia. Celia later on become, in following reincarnation, she became a, what's the name? Marina, Saint Marina. and was very dedicated Christian since she met the teachings of Jesus. And Neio Lucio was her grandfather, her confidant, was the only one who truly understood her and actually became very sympathized with Christianity himself. In that book, Emmanuel, the reincarnation of Nestorio, which was a slave in that house, in the household of Celia. And Nestor had already in that book converted to Christianity as well. So Emmanuel was already a friend of Neio Lucio's since the time of the beginning of Christianity. He had other reincarnations. He was, forget someone in England, but also in working with education in India, in England. But in this, the reincarnation that is significant to us, he was an educator in Pedro Leopoldo city, where Chico Xavier was born and started his work. He was an educator, and most of his work was trying to eradicate illiteracy in that region. He worked with programs, the government, to educate as many children as possible, to help as many children as possible to write and read. I don't know how he met Chico Xavier, but they were of well, financially well family. His son was owner of lands and farms, and Chico and Arthur Joviano. I'm sorry, Arthur Joviano was the name of the reincarnation of Neio Lucius there in Pedro Leopoldo, the educator, the one who was trying to educate children. His name was Arthur Joviano. His son, Romulo Joviano, was a farmer, was a man with good financial situation. And was Arthur Joviano who met Chico, I don't know how or when, and asked Romulo to give Chico Xavier a job. You want to say this? I know this guy. I don't know how much he knows, how much he's able to do, but he is very trustworthy, and give him a job. And Romulo Joviano was the one who gave Chico Xavier a job and become much more than his boss. He become a friend, become a protector of Chico. At one time, when Chico became a little bit more known, more popular because of his works, he used to be bombarded with a lot of energies from two sides. From those who hate his work and want to hurt him in any possible way, and for let's say, the fans, the people would be bothering him 24/7, asking for favors, give me a message from my deceased loved one, it is and that. And Romulo was a kind of a protector of Chico that would tell people, no, he's working, he's busy, he cannot receive you now, he cannot do this now, he is working for me, he has things to do. More than that, provide to Chico kind of a safe haven when he could do his psychography. Now, Chico worked his 8 hours, and did his job, but the time that he was free, um, Romulo Joviano provided him a space where he could do his psychography in peace, without interruption, without all those people bothering him. In his home, Romulo Joviano, they had weekly meetings in Spiritism. They all become Spiritists, basically. You had one daughter, Romulo Joviano have a daughter, Wanda, who used on those meetings when many things happen. If one can imagine in a meeting, in the spirituality where Chico Xavier is present, one could just imagine that many things would probably happen. So then mediumistic messages coming, and many messages of Emmanuel, of many of the spirits happened in that household. And this young girl, Wanda Jovian, was just 10 years old. She used to write, take notes of everything. And some of those notes actually became books after this incarnation of Chico. When Arthur and Jovian died, when discarnate, went back to the spiritual world, he started to write via Chico Xavier his books, and he used the name Neio Lucius. So Neio Lucio is basically be the translation of the name Neio Lucius that we see in 50 years later. Why do I think this is significant? Anyone who knows me a little bit more knows that I'm very cynical about all this, bringing reincarnations back, who was who in previous life, and things of some cases there is a value, some things I see just as gossiping, like it's People's Magazine articles, but this is not. And the great significance of this to me, just a second here, is to show how things are placed together in an order in the development of this doctrine. Emmanuel was a part of for sure that we know, a part of the Spirit of Truth, the group of spirits in charge of bringing the doctrine to Allan Kardec for the codification. Work very close with Chico Xavier, but not alone. It was a group of spirits who worked with him. How things was placed together. This Neio Lucio became an educator in a region where Chico Xavier were, introducing Chico Xavier to his son. The son was one who provided a job, or more than that, safe haven for Chico to do his work. That you see here, the things does not happen just by gratuity of destiny. There is a cause and there is an objective for everything in this reincarnation. You see this, how the pieces are placed together in the formation of the doctrine via the codification through Allan Kardec, and the continuation of the work primarily, not only, but primarily with Chico Xavier and his wonderful psychographies. I think this is significant, and it's not just a gossip. Any questions, any comment?
Actually, you can visit Fazenda Modelo, a model farm that Chico used to work. I went there, and there is the room where Chico used to receive the psychographies is there preserved. The book Paul and Stephen was received there in the farm, the whole book. And it's still a farm that is it's a working farm, and the energy there is just amazing. It's a beautiful place. So if anyone, Pedro Leopoldo is close to Belo Horizonte. It's like 30 miles from Belo Horizonte. So you can visit the farm there.
Okay. The chapters are quite small. I thought we'd do one chapter per Sunday, but you might have free time, especially after today, that you're not going to have any longer this introduction, then the introduction that you're going to read now. Maybe we're going to have to do more than then one chapter per week. Well, there is no rush. The more participation, the longer it takes. Then I love. No, they take as long as possible. And the introduction of the book, as quite usual, is of Emmanuel. And again, keep in mind, Emmanuel, as an eternal spirit, was already a friend of the spiritual author, in this case, Neio Lucio. Okay. Sarai, are you able to read?
Yes, I can, of course.
Is a good size for you to read?
Yes, perfectly. Perfect. Okay. Jesus in the home. For most scholars, Christ is simply a historical figure who changed the course of the world's political events. For most theologians, he is simply an object of study found in the scriptures, someone who gave a new direction to the interpretations of faith. For philosophers, he is the focus of endless arguments. For the multitude of passive believers, he is a providential benefactor during the troubling crisis of everyday life. However, when people grasp the grandeur of the good news, they understand that the Master is not only the reformer of civilization, the lawgiver of faith, the guide of one's reasoning, or the grandeur of earthly favors, but more than anything else, the renewer of everyone's life. Upon reaching this apex of understanding, individuals love the house of worship that guides the way they live, but they do not limit themselves to conventional worship. Conventional services. Instead, they bring the heavenly friend into the family sanctuary, where Jesus begins to take control of their passions, to correct their behavior, and to inspire their speech, thereby enabling followers to express his eternal teachings by means of living actions, through which the Lord intends to extend the divine kingdom of peace and love over the earth. When the gospel enters the home, the soul opens the door to the divine master more easily. Neio Lucio understands this profound truth that has dedicated to new disciples some of the lessons of the Lord as told within the closest circle of his first apostles and followers. Today, now that nearly 20 centuries have passed since the first fruits of the good news, Simon's house has become the entire world. Jesus continues to speak to disciples of all latitudes. May his incisive and gentle voice write in the book of our soul the renewing lesson we need to face the future, thereby making us active sowers of his infinite love. Such is the greatest happiness to which we can aspire. Emmanuel, Pedro Leopoldo, Brazil, October 3rd, 1949.
Thank you, Sarai.
Welcome.
So here, Emmanuel tells us that different individuals will see Jesus from a different angle, and they are all pretty much right. It's not wrong to see Jesus as someone who brings a new means of governance, to see Jesus as a philosopher, who sees Jesus as purely a kind of a priest, someone in a priesthood. And I think could see all this together, but primarily Jesus is a teacher who brings a complete package of the divine laws to us. And I mean, a teacher, not the only teacher, but as we understand, the one who brings the complete package, the whole package of the whole natural moral laws of Jesus, of God to us. And it is important that you see Jesus as as a friend, just like Simon and the disciples would see Jesus as a friend, and a friend who wants to be invited into our homes. And I think everybody wants to be invited. That Jesus will respect our free will, that Jesus will not come into our home without our inviting him. He respects our privacy, respects our free will, and if we close the door for him, he will not break it open. But once we are invited, we invite Jesus, he'll be gladly again as a friend to come and to bring to us the pearls of knowledges, of moral values that he has to bring. To try to break down his teachings in a way that is accessible to us. And I think that's the value of this book is exactly in that. It's break down the values of the teachings of Jesus in a way that is comprehensible to all generations, and each generation take as much as possible from it. 5 years old, we understand in accordance to the capability of a 5 years old, and a 50 years old will comprehend in accordance to the 50 years old's capabilities. In chronological age, we would expect that the 50 years old will be a lot more able to gather a lot of more information at 5 years old. But we know that in the spiritual age and the spiritual development, as we are studying that on the Spirit's book on Thursday, it's very capable that the 5 years old may be able to grasp much more and apply much more than the 50 years old. But by the law of probabilities and expectations, expect the 50 years old to be able to gather more information than the 5 years old. But this book opens in its simplicity, plenty of room for everyone to gather to understand a lot of things. Emmanuel says here that the temples of worship, they're important. The synagogues, the church, they are important. By definition, in accordance to what you gather from all of Tarsus, church would be a place of encounter of souls with common interest, with common objectives, not necessarily a place full of statues and everything, but a reunion of souls who seek to elevate themselves morally. And if you can do it as one individual, we can do it better as 10 individuals, and all those 10 individuals have put all their energy towards that, then it becomes much more valuable. The energy is much greater for us to learn. And that is the value of the temples, the church, the spiritual center. That we hope people start to come back, those who are able to the spiritual center, because of its importance. They're not going to deny. But the household, the home, is also a temple. Is also, or should also be, a church. If it's not every single day, in spiritual suggest at least once a week, that you transform that in a temple, that you open the door and say, Jesus, you are welcome here, not today, but every single day. But today, this 15 minutes, the half an hour, this hour and a half, whatever time you dedicate to it, is to us to remind ourselves how much you are welcome here. It's to us to remind ourselves of how valuable your lessons are and how much better our lives is when you are with us, when we are with you. And we see the simplicity of, the teachings, nothing really fancy. people go to work, go to school, do what they have to do. Simon have to go fishing. The other one was a doctor, have to go and see the doctors. But come a time when everybody comes home, and among us a little jokery, a little entertainment there. There is always a little time to get together and speak of things of greater value or spirituality. And that's what Jesus did in Simon Peter's home. Allowed people to be themselves, of course, allowed people to question. And we see over here many of the teachers come from questioning of other peoples, and Jesus used the opportunity to bring a lesson by using the commonality, using the everyday life, nothing fancy, nothing extraordinary. On the contrary, very ordinary. And that's exactly what the idea of this book, as Emmanuel lives, tells to us. Once we allow the gospel to enter our home, the souls open the door to the divine master more easily. Once we open our home to Jesus, using the gospel as a means to facilitate that interaction between us and the master, we elevate ourselves, we elevate our energy. And by doing so, we kind of protect ourselves, we protect our home. We attract spirits of goodwill who come and help us where they can. We kind of protect the home entirely by elevating our energies, to elevate the quality of our thoughts. Is there any question? So, chapter 1 now, Christian worship at home.
Okay. Christian worship in the home. The firmament of the stars on a night of silvery moonlight, when the Lord, staying at Peter's house for the time being, picked up the sacred writings, and as if he wanted to set the conversation on a new course after it had become rather unproductive and unedifying, he asked kindly, "Simon, what does the fisherman do before he goes to the market with the day's catch?" The disciple thought for a few moments and answered somewhat hesitantly, "Well, of course, master, he chooses the best fish. No one would buy the others." Jesus smiled. Okay,
Oh,
I'm sorry. Jesus smiled and asked another question. "And the potter, what does he do when he wants to make a piece?" "Obviously, Lord," replied the fisherman, intrigued, "he molds the clay and gives it the form he wants." What a kind-hearted and piercing look the heavenly friend pressed the matter. "And what does the carpenter do to accomplish the project he proposes?" Simon answered very simply, without hesitating. "He planes the wood and then uses the axe, the saw, the hammer, and the chisel. Otherwise, he could not shape the unformed piece." Jesus didn't say anything for a few moments and then explained, "This may also be said of the home. The home is the first school and temple of the soul. The home is a true explorer of individuals for community life. If the merchant selects his merchandise, if the shipbuilder cannot build a boat without shaping the wood according to plan, how could one hope for a safe and peaceful community unless the home becomes a better place? World peace begins under the roof that shelters us. If we can't learn to live in peace within four walls, how can nations expect to coexist in harmony? If we can't love the brother or sister right next to us and who is involved with us in our daily struggle, how can we revere their eternal Father who seems so far away. Jesus glanced around the humble room, paused briefly, and continued, Peter, we need to shine a new light for all who might seek our fraternal assistance. In your home, the table is a place for your bread. On it, you receive from the Lord the food you need each day. Around it, why not plant the seeds of happiness and peace in conversation and thought? The Father who, by the way of the soil, provides wheat for our storehouse, sends us light by way of heaven. Just as sunlight is the diffusion of the rays that comprise it, abundance begins with the grain of seed. That is why the gospel did not begin among the crowds, but rather in the simple abode of shepherds and animals. Simon Peter gazed at the master with humble, lucid eyes, and since he could not find the right words to explain himself, he murmured meekly, Master, may it be as you desire. Then, inviting the disciples' family to join him for an edifying talk and uplifting meditation, Jesus unrolled the writings of wisdom and started the world's first Christian home worship service.
Thank you. So this is a very good introduction of what comes ahead. And we're just going to say here that each chapter is completely independent, each lesson is completely independent, but they follow a sequence. When you go to the second one, I think you have to go to the second one, you will see there is a sequence for this first one, and that sequence is very important that you keep in mind. We can open lesson 16 here and read and be independent, but would gain a lot more if you have read 15 and 14 before. Then 16 will make a lot more sense to us. Here, when Neio Lucio is telling us is how this conversation in the home started. And it's important to note that Jesus picked up the sacred writings. There's a respect to religiosity or spirituality of those in the household. Remember, those are Jewish individuals, right? They have the sacred writings, and Jesus was born in a Jewish tradition, did not disrespect it. Brought a new paradigm, reminded us the true revelations of the first revelation, the first testament, or the first testament of the Old Testament, separated what was of divine nature from what was man-made nature, what was made by the necessity of the Jewish people, especially in accordance with Moses, right? Have to introduce many commandments to keep some order, some things. And Jesus came later on and make a kind of a separation of what was of divine nature, of what was a true revelation from divinity, and what was necessary at one point, but no longer necessary at another point. But was a new paradigm without neglecting the value of the first revelation, of course. So it shows the respect that we all should have to the religiosity, spirituality of others. Pick up the sacred writings. And it says over here that as if you want to start a conversation over a new course, if it had become rather unproductive and unedifying. Again, I mean, we come from work, we have a long day at work from school, you need to relax and entertain ourselves, something easy reading, something that does not work as hard or that tired, but there's always time and room for something more productive, more edifying. in our extra time. And Jesus suggests that we should reserve some of our time for those edifying, more productive conversations and time in the household. So this in itself is very important, a very short paragraph, you can get a lot from it. And he started the conversation as questions to Peter Simon Peter, right? And he asked about the fisherman, what the fisherman does when it's time to take the fish to the market. And the fisherman will select the better fish. That the people does not want the lesser quality or less desirable fish. If you want to sell yourself, if you want to get the reward of your work, you have to bring to the market the better fish. And of course, for us, we have to get a lesson for us from it. When you go out there and you're going to sell ourselves, going to put ourselves to service, to offer yourself, to give the best of us. As we always say over here, I cannot give you my ugliness. Why you need my ugliness? You can do nothing with that. You can only cause you to have pity at me. I don't want your ugliness. I can barely deal with my own. I want your best. I want what you have of good to offer me. When you go out there, you present the best that you have to offer in intellectuality, intellectual level, in morality, in spirituality, and everything that you have to go out there and give what's the best of us. Because that's what the people want, and that's what we should want to offer them. The fishermen are going to pick up the smallest fish, the one that doesn't look so healthy anymore. No, he wants to offer the best fish. Not only as a mean of get the reward, but it's the good product that you have. Okay, here's the product of my work, of my best work I present to you. And our best work in ourselves to give the best that we have of us to others. And then he asked about the potterman. What does with the clay? As I have to work on that clay, and he has to mold the clay. Now, obelisk Lord, replied Fishman, he molds the clay and gives it the form he wants. Going back to the fish, if you want to give our best, the best that you have to mold and remold ourselves to the best that we can be. We have to go to the self-remodeling. We mold yourself, work on ourselves to present the best that you have to offer. And how do you do that? You do that by educating ourselves morally and intellectually through modification, transformation of our character to the best, of gaining the ability of being more patient, of gaining the ability of speaking a little bit better, of listening a little bit better. The work of remolding ourselves, primarily, of course, through education, moral and intellectual. And thirdly, he asks about the carpenter. What does the carpenter have to do with the wood? Well, the carpenter has to transform that wood, and the transformation that wood require, let's assume that wood has feelings, sacrifices to that wood. You have to cut pieces off, you have to remove the pieces that doesn't look good, the nuts that some wood have. You have to make it smooth, and to make it smooth, you have to scrape the surface, remove the dirty, make it nice and gentle to the touch, so when you touch it, you're not going to hurt yourself. And that's a a way of the transformation of ourselves, the remodeling of ourselves to present our best to others. It requires this degree of sacrifice of cutting out the pieces that are undesirable. Remove the pieces that are not attractive to anyone. Remove the pieces that could be abrasive, that could hurt, that could spikes others out there. So in order to start from the fisherman, present the best of us, we need to remold ourselves. In order to remold ourselves, you need to do that hardship, perhaps a sacrifice of cutting off the things that are unproductive, the things that could be painful, hurtful to others. This is a work of sacrifice that a Christian will do in order to present the best of ourselves to others, to be the best of ourselves to others, to be the useful of ourselves to others. So there's three scenarios that Jesus asked, and of course, each one will gather as much information, as I said, from those three examples given by Peter. Giving our best, remodeling ourselves, doing the sacrifices in that remodeling to remove everything that is undesirable, everything that could be painful, hurtful to others. And he continues that the household is the place where you can do their work, collective, individually. Brown always says, remind the progress is individual, we do progress individually, but we are codependent. No one learns from oneself. We need one another. If we are placed together in a household as relatives, we just spoke of relatives this week, it's for a reason, is because we have a lot to offer to one another. And during the beginning of this passage, using the time that you have together to some edifying conversation, to something that may help us to ease the required sacrifice of our transformation, to remove, to cut off, to saw off the undesirable things that we have, to free ourselves a little bit of our selfishness, of our pride, of our patience, to become more accommodating to others, to the needs of others, to have greater empathy toward the difficulty of others, to be more generous. The household is that place of work where it should start that exercise. And we are both the educator and the one being educated at the household. So Jesus suggests that our home should be that environment where we will do the sacrifices, do the hardship of removing everything that is not so good within us and strengthening the things that are good within us in that process of remodeling or modeling ourselves to present the best of us. And the best of us, of course, we are created the image of God. So to be an image of God. And Neio Lucio continue telling, I keep saying Emmanuel, I'm sorry guys, you guys can correct me every time. Okay, I'm so used to saying Emmanuel, but Neio Lucio tells us that that's the way it started, the first Christian home worship. And then, as I said in the beginning, this book is one who really injected this idea of the gospel of home that it's now very commonly practiced among all spiritists, or should be. But again, as I said, not in a convention, not as going to the church and thinking of the soccer game, but dedicated that time to really reminding Jesus that the door is always open, that we seek that our minds, our thoughts, our hearts, our sentiments be always in accordance to his energies, to his teachings. Okay, any comments, any questions?
I think it's maybe worth reflecting on how did Neio Lucio have access to this information, right? Because that's something that people normally ask, right? When we read Humberto de Campos, when we read Amalia Rodrigues, and all the stories of the time of Jesus, right? Where do they find this information? How can they have access to this information? Back to you, Elmo.
Well, I can answer from Emmanuel, because I heard from him himself say in some of his books that he did a lot of work of research, that he had access to a lot of information, that he had the visitation of many individuals who were there at the time, who offered them this information. And I know that in the book, Paul and Steve, Emmanuel had the opportunity to interview Olaf Tarsus himself, and then the opportunity to interview others who spent time with Paul of Tarsus at the time that he was Paul of Tarsus, of course. From Brother X, I know that he was a chronist. He was a man who did tremendous amount of research, and he did tremendous amount of research in the spiritual world to get all that information. From Neio Lucio, I don't have any information how he got those informations. And if you have it, Ron, you can shout us, because I didn't really research for it.
No, I don't have any information, and I think it's the same, but the same applies to all of them. What you mentioned about Emmanuel, right? The history is all stored there in the spiritual world, the history of humanity. And the more evolved the spirits are, the more access they have to their own past and their own history and the history of others as allowed, right? So I think that's how it works, right? Especially when you are going to bring such an important piece of historical information, you are going to have access to the records.
Yeah, that's what I imagine also. If this world that we live now is a bad copy of the spiritual world, what can I imagine a higher spheres of existence is still associated with planet Earth, of course, not even going beyond that. If we have good libraries over here where you can go into microfilms and review data, of millions of data, perhaps nowadays with technology, you can even start to imagine. But when I was in school and I had access to go into microfilms and see valuable data that was in microfilms, I think it was so big could not fit in regular films, have to be microfilms. Can we imagine the source of information that is available in the high orders of our existence, the kinds of libraries that they have there? If in our leadership meetings at our level, we know that suffering spirits, sometimes they are able to see in a screen, so to say, images of their own past, things that they have done in the past that is useful to redirect spirits very often. Look at yourself past there. Remember when things were different, your mind was different, and they're able to see things like that. Can you just imagine? We can't imagine. I'll state upset. We cannot even imagine the kind of resources it is available in that higher places of existence, even higher than Oscillator, I would say. What they could retrieve to educate themselves and pass that education to us, it's unimaginable. So I can't say for sure how Neio Lucio did it, but we know that they have resources available to go back in time and get all this information to us. But I think that's a very important point. I mean, because the question is, well, we know everything that is written in the Gospels, right? All the evangelists and non-evangelists wrote their Gospels, and some of them are there in writing for us to retrieve the information. But there's a lot of news that we get in Spiritism, a lot of information that in Spiritism that is not in any of the Gospels. Where do they come from? How did they get it? I mean, Neio Lucio was not there. Brother X, Humberto de Campos was not there. So, but you were not here in the late 1400s, and we know that Columbus discovered America, right? So there is means to retrieve information, and if you have that here in our little underdeveloped world, I can only imagine in a sphere of spiritual existence where spirits of the caliber of Emmanuel, of Neio Lucio have access to. Any more questions, information, comments? Okay, so we can do the second reading. It's also quite small.
Okay.
And as I said, keep in mind that although the chapters, each one is independent, it does follow a sequence if we are paying attention to it.
I have one question, Elmo.
Please.
Yes, before you move on, can you review with us some of the practical benefits that we can have just by studying the gospel at home?
Sure. The idea of the gospel at home is in our very busy lives. You have so many activities, and the more we progress, it seems the busier we are and doing so many things. And our mind is bombarded with so many thoughts from all kinds of things. You have to eat, you have to do our job, whatever it may be, you have to exercise, and then we have to do all the entertainment things that is available to us. That if we do not dedicate it a time and place to feed the eternal spirit, to educate the eternal spirit, to exercise the eternal spirit, we may neglect our spirituality. We know that we have to feed the body. We know that we have to exercise this body. We know that we have to educate ourselves to do our jobs, and you never stop studying. And whatever field of work you do, there is you always need to educate yourselves. You always need to get up to date with technology. So you need to do all those things that pertain to our lives over here. Then you may forget that our true life is a spiritual one. That the same way that we have to feed physical body, we have to feed the eternal spirit. The same way that we have to educate ourselves intellectually, we have to continue our education, moral education as well. The same way that you have to exercise our muscle or our body to stay fit, you have to exercise the spirit as well. The gospel at home is that reminder to us. It reminds us that although we have this incarnated life, this busy life, and all those things, all those demanding things, and all those pleasuring things as well, but we have to remind ourselves of us an eternal spirit, that we and the eternal spirit need to educate ourselves morally, continue our evolution. And for us, Christian spiritists, the best tool that we have, of course, is resourcing to Jesus Christ. To dedicate at least one day with a set time. It will be each day, whatever day we want to. It's going to be Monday at 9 p.m. It's going to be Saturday at 7 a.m. It doesn't matter. Be consistent. That day, that time, will be the day that we are going to put everything aside and refer ourselves to our spiritual nature. And we use, of course, the teachings of Christ, because you are Christians. And by doing so, at that moment, the spirits what associate with us, who are also Christians and understand our need to educate ourselves, will join us at that day, at that time. And by doing so, that day, at that time, the house will be filled with Christianity at energy level, so to say. All the spirits there come here, bring the energies of the desire to be with Jesus, to receive Jesus' teachings. A church, the way Paul explained it to us. Our home becomes the temple, the church. And at the spiritual level, there is a purification of the house because the space cannot be occupied by two things at the same time. And love trumps everything else, right? So when the spirits bringing love, bringing Jesus into our home, they purify the ambient. They remove all the negative energies. Good spirits come here to join us, to help us. And they do that work in the house, in the home, within us. Good spirits who are able to, they have the know-how, they will, the word that is used usually is magnetize the water that you put on the table, which it's okay, it's a word, I don't know what it exactly it means by magnetize, but what it means is to provide proper elements in that water that help us in our needs. Not gonna save us of any disease or anything, but could help us. And if you do that consistently every week, the house will remain as purified as you allow it to be, of course, right? With our ignorance, with our undesirable thoughts that we still have that comes from our undesirable sentiments. As time goes by, we start to contaminate our home ourselves, not even thinking about others who come to and mess things up. Well, we ourselves do it. But the more that we do it, the longer the houses stay purified. The more we educate ourselves with the quality of our sentiments, that will produce better thoughts, that will maintain that house as it was prepared for that day that we open to receive Jesus. When I say, and now here's my belief, personal belief, that when we open the house on that day to Jesus, Jesus comes to our home. Comes through our home, through his love, through his teaching, through his peace. But this is very personal that I believe. The same way that if I open the window, the sunlight comes through, and comes through equally to every house where the sun is shining. But we have to open the window. You have to remove the shades so the light can come in. I believe that Jesus is there, open to come in, as soon as we remove the shades and invite Jesus in. And when he comes in through his peace, through his love, it stays for as long as you allow it to stay. And the more we repeat doing the gospel every week at the same time, the more we educate ourselves. Remember what, and I love what Mother Teresa says, that the prayer is the means of educating the desire. The more we pray, the more educated will be our desire. And everything starts with our will, with our desire. We will, things that is, we will start to wish, to desire things that are better. And therefore we invited better spirits to be in that home. And we will take those who does not share the same kind of desire. They're gonna go somewhere else. They're gonna hang out there. They'll go somewhere else. So it's a work of continuity. No miracles. Do not expect any miracles. Do not expect any big jump in our progress, but will facilitate our continuous progress. To me, that's the great value of the gospel at home. It should be done the same time, at the same day, everything, because it's a commitment that we have with all the spirits. Again, those who are able and willing to come and share the energy, share the teachings, inspire us to better understand whatever reading we read on that day. It will also be a school for those who come to learn. You may have spirits associated with us who will partake in that education process, who will educate themselves through this process, who will receive the peace, the love of Jesus in their household at the time that we open to Jesus. So it's a win-win-win-win kind of thing. Does it answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Anybody else?
I think it's also important. One question that comes when we talk about the gospel at home is the other members of the house, right? How should we involve or not involve them? And it's important to understand and respect the free will, right? So if we have a companion that is not at all interested in doing the gospel at home or doesn't believe in anything, we choose a day and time that we can be by ourselves, or that we choose a place that we can do it by ourselves. When we talk about children, we should include them. It's our responsibility as parents to bring them, even if it's against their will. Of course, when they are too young to understand, when they're babies, we look for a time that they are sleeping so they can participate in spirit. when they are young enough to understand, we will try to bring simple stories that they can understand, talk about Jesus and the gospel, but in a simpler way. And when they are older and they can understand, they are teenagers, we start doing the gospel as we will do the gospel for ourselves and include them, even if they are not interested in participating. They complain, we ask them to read the book, we ask them to make whatever comment they can. It's always a challenge, I know, but it's our responsibility. But when they become adults, they make their own choices, and we shouldn't impose the gospel at home to anyone who's not interested in participating in terms of adults. Okay.
Okay, yeah, and that is very important. We do what we can, but comes a point and we need to respect individuals' individuality and free will, the same way that Jesus respects ours. And as I said, there is a sequence. The second reading that we're going to have to do now will pretty much say everything that João just told us here. All right, then?
Okay. The School for Souls. The members of Simon Peter's household were gathered around Christ, listening to his gentle and persuasive voice as he commented on the sacred texts. When the divine word ended his beautiful lesson, Peter's mother-in-law was troubled and asked, "Lord, what is our life in the home supposed to be after all?" Jesus gazed at her questioningly, implying that he wanted her to explain herself more fully. She elaborated. We begin the endeavor amongst flowers, only to find ourselves gathering a bush of thorns later on. At first, there is a promise of peace and understanding. However, stones and troubles soon appear. Seeing that the Galilean woman was on the verge of tears, Jesus responded quickly. The home is a school for souls, the temple where divine wisdom gradually enables us to understand humankind more fully. He smiled and asked, "What do you do first with lentils before serving them at mealtime?" The woman responded hesitantly, "Well, of course, Lord, I have to put them on the stove and cook them long enough. Then I have to season them in order to make them taste good. And would you, perchance, serve raw dough at the table?" "Of course not," responded the humble old woman. "In order to make it edible, I would have to bake it in the oven. Otherwise," the divine friend then considered, "in heaven too, there is a festive banquet where our sentiments must serve the Father's glory. Most of the time, the home is a holy cauldron or the preparatorial oven. What may seem to us like affliction or suffering in the home is actually a resource for the spirit. The soul that is awakened to the Lord's will receives the most enlightening blessings from its renewing struggles, because only by living with others in the home, by studying aspirations and inclinations unlike our own, and by observing the defects of others and putting up with them, can we learn to overcome our own imperfections. Haven't you ever noticed how quickly a person's life passes by? The life of the body is much like that of a flower. In the morning, it emanates a fragrance. At night, it withers. The home is a brief course on the fraternity we will enjoy in the life eternal. The suffering and natural conflicts within its walls are lessons. Simon's mother-in-law listened carefully to all this and then remarked, "But Lord, there are persons who struggle and suffer, but they never learn." Christ rested his very lucid eyes on her and asked again, "What do you do with the hard lentils that do not yield to the action of the heat?" Of course, I toss them into the garbage because they might hurt the mouth of the careless yet trusting person at the table. The same thing happens to the soul who rebels against the spiritually constructive lessons of the home," finished the master. The struggles of everyday life keep the soul stirred up to its benefit. However, when death arrives on the scene, that great selector of spirits, as provisions of the storehouse of our Father, our souls who did not yield to the sanctioning heat, who kept themselves in the same hardened state as when they were first led to the blessed oven of the body, will be tossed out, and for an indeterminate time, they will be like fertilizer in the detritus of nature.
Okay, thanks.
Mhm.
So we see that in the commonality of the household, the Jesus would hang out mostly in those last 3 years of his life at Peter's house. And again, they go through the job, they fulfill their responsibility throughout the day. The fishermen go fish, whoever does whatever does, and they would have time together in the house. They would have conversation. Jesus would of course use every opportunity as a opportunity to teach, bring us this moral value. And Peter's mother, right? Ask a question regarding to the common question that everybody who lives in family would ask: the difficulty of living in the household, that sometimes the differences of minds of spirits that we have to share a home with. And she asked, there we begin with the endeavor amongst flower, only to find ourselves gathering a bunch of thorns later on. At first, there is a promise of peace and understanding. However, storms and troubles soon appear. It sounds pretty much like average life, average households, right? And what is the meaning of it? Why do you have to go through this? And Jesus answered that the home is a school for souls, the temple where divine wisdom gradually enables us to understand humankind more fully. And he developed that statement. Everything else that follows the development of that statement. That in the household, we are again being educated, being educators, that we learn to understand ourselves, that we learn to understand humankind more fully. But we cannot go through understand humankind more fully if we don't do exercise of understanding ourselves first. It's almost like we have obsessors in the household. And when we do the studies of obsessions, I like always to start by saying the most thing that I have to learn from this is make sure that we ourselves may not be an obsessor to others. Because it's very easy to point fingers and see the obsessors around us and making us do this, that driving us to behave this way. What about ourselves? Are you making sure that you are not an obsessor to someone else? Have you educated yourself, understood yourself better to prevent you from being that obsessor to others? I always like to start the study of obsessions by saying that one thing that we must learn from this study is not to be an obsessor ourselves. In the household, we receive individuals what they need, who can get something from us. We receive individuals to whom we owe something during some kind of debit, and have the opportunity of of resolving our differences, of rearrange our relationships for the better. Sometimes we are the one who needs to learn so much from others, to have the patience, to have the humility, the humbleness, to absorb the lessons being afterwards in the household, to understand our potential as an educator, that others can and will benefit from us if we seek to understand them, seek to understand their need, how to address them, how to deliver what's best for them in a way that will be receptive to them, because it's very easy to speak our mind, but you need to direct what we say in a way that is that what can receive, can internalize. The same way that example that Jesus asked us, before you serve the lentil, you have to prepare that lentil. You have to cook it, make it soft. And once it's soft, you have to season it to make it good to others. Go back to the first lesson, this was a sequence, right? To present the best, you need to cook. You need to expose it to the heat, to the fire, make it more gentle to others. We do it ourselves. We are responsible to do it to our children. We are responsible to do that to our children. To offer that opportunity of remodeling, right? To make them to seek to do that work of remodeling to the sacrifice required. And the sacrifice is cutting off the pieces that are not good, cutting off the pride, cutting off the selfishness, cutting off the tendency for violence, and so on. You can go over here, removing all those contaminations that allows us to be a pure reflection of the image of God within us. That takes hard work, that takes hardship. And the little then goes and says, yeah, but we do that. We try to educate and try to do this, and sometimes it doesn't work. And then Jesus continues and says, and asks, what do you do with the lentils that does not cook? So I got in a pot with with 500 lentils, and I cook them all, but there is 50 of them that continue hard. All of them are soft and ready to be consumed, can be seasoned, but the other 50 are hard as rock. What do? Why, you trash them. We don't want to serve the one that is hard, because it will hurt people, can break the tooth, and so forth and so on. Going back to the first reading again, you want to offer the best that you have to offer. We invite a friend to your home, we prepare lentils, and I'm going to give them raw lentils. You don't want to expose them to probability of breaking the tooth or having an indigestion for eating raw legumes, right? You offer the best. So you prepare, you go to the sacrifice, educate and everything else of ourselves and our loved ones, our children. It is our responsibility. We do our best, not always the work. Then what happened there now? Jesus continues says that even when we do our work, we do our best, and those who are resistant to the sacrifices, resistant to the teachings, resistant to the remodeling, that continue to have the sharp pieces, that does not remold oneself to the necessary sacrifices. We did our job. I done my part. And each one do our part to the best of our abilities, of course. Then it's now up to a higher authority. The cook is the high authority in the kitchen. The soup that the lentils that are not properly cooked, you'll be separated and eliminated, not going to be served. Bring that analogy to us. We've done our part. Now it's up to a high authority. And the high authority, God, with its divine laws, will take care of it. The spirits who were not able to remold oneself, who was resistant to the necessary sacrifices, to the cutting of the sharp edges, to the knots that there is in the wood and everything else, will be separated when the time is right. And they will go through places where they will have those sacrifices now imposed. Now it's not only a free will. Remember, God educates through love and re-educates through pain. The choice is ours. Those who are resistant, those who rebel to the opportunities making its own choices, have made his or her choices. Now they will go through the process of the sacrifice, the education, on a more forceful way, choice that they made. And I think that we bring this lesson to the value of the gospel at home. And everything that John had just told us comes to a point in which some does not have the free will. Their free will is restricted, and parents, in the case, have the control of the free will, so to say. You sit at the table, you listen to the lessons of the day. Parents, you make those lessons as easy as possible, as adequate to the age. You know, you're not gonna take the 5 years old and study Paul and Stephen. It's a bit too much. You're not gonna get anyone who cannot understand more abstract concepts, something that they're not ready to receive yet. How do we educate? Smaller lessons that, again, just like this book, easy for child adolescent to learn some lessons. We'll give it to them, or we'll explain them to the best of our abilities. We try to make it entertaining as possible and educated as possible. Or you have children who will rebel this, for instance, at the beginning, then they will have to sit like it or not. But nothing's lost. Eventually, they become adolescents, and it becomes harder to keep them on the chair. They will have more strong arguments against it. Some will not. Some will be very receptive from the beginning, and you always like and always sit without putting any fight. Some will put a little fight, but you sit again. until it comes to a point that you have to give them the full free will. That you cannot hostage that free will any longer. And then they'll make the decisions, whatever they want to make of it. Personally, I believe though the lessons stay, nothing is lost. If we provide that foundation of good moral values, that will prevail. Because to me, good prevails over everything else. That very often what comes out of the mouth is not what people have in their hearts. If we give them that strong foundation, put them at, since the early days, receiving valuable lessons for us, of course, the teachings of Jesus Christ, or someone who lives in the Himalayas, perhaps the teachings of their gods, their things, but it's equally good. It stays, it sticks, because good always prevails. And they will go through the experience, then they're gonna bounce their heads, they make choices, but they're always gonna come back to that strong foundation. And that strong foundation begins in the home, and the best tool to provide that strong foundation is with the gospel at home. So nothing is lost. And for those who insist in being completely closed to what's being taught in the gospel at home, they will have the opportunity. They will go to the necessary sacrifices to remold themselves, so then also eventually will be able to give the best of themselves, which is, again, the presence of God within us. The choice is ours, how long it's going to take. Responsibility of fathers, of parents, of educators to provide it. For as long as we are able to demand, you demand. Doing their best to make it accessible, being fun, but comes to a point that each one will make the decisions, and whatever decision they make, they'll have to deal with the consequence of those decisions. But all eventually will be for the good. Any questions, any comment? Wayne?
I really like how this is put, and they talk about the lentils, throwing away the hard ones that didn't cook right, but then at the very end, it's not throw out, it's in the compost bin. It's everything is going to be used and becomes fertilizer, and so that's good. I just like how that was put. When you were saying that when doing the gospel and with the family, and there's someone who's not with the program, are we saying to move away from them, or do it when they're not there, or as a effort not to impose upon them, or is it because their different energy detracts from the meeting?
No, maybe I misspoke, but I said for when
John
those,
was talking.
I'm sorry, yeah, when those that we still are in the position to say, no, it's my home, you sit and you do the gospel with us, like it or not, with the good or bad energy, you sit with us, we do that. But once they are, I don't know, 18, whatever number one thinks is appropriate, I don't put a chronological age on it, I think more in terms of maturity. Say, I don't want the gospel on the seat anymore. So, okay, your chair is here. You are welcome. You have the foundations, and you're gonna have to deal with the consequences of your decision. Do whatever you want to do now, right? But no, in terms of energies, no. When we are still in the position of put them on that chair, they can come in whatever kind of energy they have. They have that. And the worse the energy, the more they need to sit in that chair. The more rebel they seem to be, the more we're going to put them in the chair for as long as we can. Those are the ones who needs the most.
But I think also Wayne was more asking about adults, right? So let's say I'm my partner or my whoever lives in my household that does not agree with doing the gospel. We try to find a place or time that do not disturb them, right? Because they're watching. We're not going to do in the living room when they are watching a movie on the TV, for example. Doesn't make sense. So if we're doing it at the time they're at home, we do it at a separate place. If they are indifferent, we should do when they are at home, just in a different place. If they are against it, we should do it when they are not at home. Just for sake of being accommodating to everyone.
But I understand how Elmo was saying that the person who is negative to the ideas really is the one that needs to sit there. Much like when we say prayers out loud, those lesser evolved spirits that are around us, they can't escape our prayer, because they're there to do something to us, to affect us. So we're bombarding them with goodness and love, kind of thing.
Yeah, for as long as we can, right? But
yeah,
like an adult, you don't want to sit there. But then Jean says to accommodating them, that's be a two-way road also, right? They have to accommodate us too. If they're rebellious to our beliefs, they also have to accommodate to our beliefs and our things. So it's if you live in the same household, at a minimum of amicability has to have over there to work things out. You don't want to sit at the table and do the gospel, fine. This day, this time, I'll do it. You work around it. We find ways. But yeah, those will be the ones to whom that we would send our vibrational prayers to help those individuals.
Thank you.
All right, thanks everyone. We're a little bit over. Carol, can you make the final prayer for us?
Yes, indeed. Thank you very, very much, Elmo. Thank you for doing the research for this presentation and this new book entitled Jesus in the Home. Most appreciated. Infinite Creator and Divine Providence, we give thanks to be together again as brothers and sisters for our studies of this new book, Jesus in the Home, chapters 1 and 2. Jesus is the historical figure and universal teacher of love and the moral laws. He is a friend through our invitation and free will to bring forth the valuable teachings for all chronological ages and the world in its everyday life. The combination of Jesus and the gospel teachings in the home keeps us balanced and attracting the good spirits to our personal temple, which is the school of the soul, and our primary community, the family. The home is where we can safely commune and receive spiritual food and worship. We progress individually and evolve and transform through the family. We learn to be more empathetic, loving, and patient. We try to do our best to remove pride and selfishness through the guidance of Jesus, the Master Teacher, and the gospel at home. This is our source of spiritual teachings for the purification of the home and to help console our sufferings. We give thanks to the spiritual benefactors and the good spirits for guiding and inspiring us today. May we receive the love, light, and peace of Christ within us, and for our loved ones, our teachers, our directors, our counselors, our mediums, the workers, and all participants. We pray for inner peace and especially now for world peace and for those who are suffering in the physical and spiritual worlds. We pray for our center, SGNY, and all Spiritist centers throughout the world, that they may grow, prosper, expand, and be protected throughout the day and throughout the night. As we close, we humbly ask for safety and protection as we return to our family, friends, loved ones, and co-workers. May we go forth and remind ourselves to be beacons of love, of light, of peace, of service, and charity, which is love in action. May peace and love prevail. So be it.